Hello and welcome to Shift Talk. My name is Chad, and as you'll notice, Greg is not with us again this week, and I wasn't able to find what's the word I'm looking for here? A replacement host in time. This is actually kind of a spur of a moment. I wanted to, I wanted to get on. There was a couple things I wanted to talk about, and more importantly, I wanted to talk about them with you guys. So welcome everyone to the show. Hopefully everyone's doing all right. Just get these things shared on the socials. So today, depending on time and, well, more importantly, how active everyone is. What the hell's on my shirt? Obviously, we're going to talk about the thumbnail, which is, Cleetus was unfortunately denied to race at anything above a mile in length on the O'Reilly series. We're going to talk on whether or not that's a good thing, that's a bad thing, that's just one of the things that goes with, it's one of those things in motorsports, right? Then if we have time and if we keep going, I may want to touch on, there seems to be some conversation, especially if you watch like the Speed podcast on American drivers or NASCAR drivers in general and where they sit in the hierarchy of, for lack of a better way of putting it, driver rankings in the globally. Sorry. I think I'd be prepared doing things solo. But, just want to say hello, say hi to everyone, see how everyone's doing out there. It's just me and you. Hunter over on YouTube, what's going on, my dude? How you doing? Welcome. Hopefully you enjoy your time here. Hopefully that doesn't break it. Anyway, let's hop right into it. So, like I mentioned, Cleetus McFarland was denied on the big tracks by NASCAR. Seems to be a decision that is, for lack of a better way of putting it, universally praised. Dale Jr. came out and said that, he agrees with NASCAR's decision. He didn't see enough from Cleetus at Rockingham to approve him to race on Daytona or Talladega and stuff like that. Obviously the door bumper clear guys with Freddie Kraft and Tommy Baldwin, we all know how they feel. They don't make any secret of it. But I want to actually touch on a couple of things. Like, first and foremost, if you go and you kind of watch the Rockingham video that Cleetus posted and what have you, in addition to his reaction to being denied, I'm of the certain mindset that, and don't get me wrong, if you've watched any of my content on this subject, you'll know I'm a pretty big supporter of his, pretty big realist, all that sort of things when it comes to, where and how and when he should be racing, especially in in a top flight series like NASCAR. Now, you can come from other walks or other forms of motorsports, and you can kind of poo-poo on NASCAR. That's a, part of the whole our American drivers getting enough credit kind of a thing. But I got the sense watching it, and I mean, he wasn't very shy about it. He said full stop, he felt like he was in over his head in the O'Reilly's car. And just all the other stuff when you were talking about it and how he feels in the car and all this other sort of stuff. I think it's disappointing, but it's not the worst thing in the world. You look at how he was driving and reacting and all that sort of stuff when he was driving the ARCA car. Dude was comfortable. Dude was having the time of his life. He was all that good stuff. And then you could visibly see a tone shift. He was still trying to, quote unquote, let Cleetus out, the quote unquote character that he's developed for himself. But you could tell that He was on edge. And I'm not saying he shouldn't have been. I am not saying he shouldn't have been on edge or nervous or holy cow, I can't believe I'm here or any of that sort of stuff because, you know, it's one step away from, you know, the top of stock car racing, the tippity top of stock car racing. I understand. I don't necessarily think I understand it, but from a strictly, you know, how do I put this? From the Europeans, for lack of a better way of putting it, kind of have a different viewpoint of NASCAR, of what is going on here? I didn't want to do that. Oops. Here we go. If you like the European side of things, like, oh, top flight stock car racing, how hard could be? It's just making left turns all day. That's also, not to get sidetracked or anything, that's also one of the things I think is a huge benefit for Cleetus doing all of this. Just mute that. Mute. There we go. It's huge benefit because it actually shows that there is a lot more going on. A lot more going on in terms of driving a stock car around an oval than people realize. You know, those people who, you know, it's just oval racing. How hard could it be? Turns out it's really, really hard. So, and like I said, that's having Cleetus, quote unquote, struggle, again, kind of illustrates that it's pretty serious. And when you combine that with the fact of, you know, somebody like SVG talking about how difficult ovals are, how the line moves, how the groove moves, the arrow involved, how, you know, you saw it in the first almost spin at the Rock with Cleetus, right? He lost all of his side force trying to make it 3 wide, which everyone, including Cleetus, has said wasn't the smartest idea, but I get it. I can't say I wouldn't have done the same. Not that I'm saying I have anything remotely close to his talent or any of the professionals doing it. That sort of thing. But here's the thing. I have maintained from the start on this that I'm going to listen to the guys who know, the guys in the know, guys who've done it, guys like Dale Jr., Kevin Harvick. You know, it sucks that the Biff isn't here to sort of, because I think this journey would have looked a lot different. Not a lot different, but I do think I don't think Cleetus is rushing. I do think there's an element of rushing involved. And what I mean by that is, I don't think being in an O'Reilly's car was the plan when he set foot or was getting ready to go to Daytona in the ARCA car. Nor do I think the truck was really on his radar until it just sort of fell into his lap and all that. I think he was perfectly content running only ARCA again this year, doing a little more races, getting more comfortable, and then seeing where that took him. But like he said multiple times, any one of us who got the opportunity, or Richard Childress comes knocking, right? And asks, hey, you want to drive for me? We're going to coach you. We're going to make you the best driver you possibly can be. Who's saying no to that? And there's some, like I think in the Door Bumper Clear, like Freddie Kraft's like, I wouldn't say yes to that. And bullshit. Everyone who wants to be a NASCAR driver, if you're doing this sort of stuff, and Richard Childress says, yo, here's my complex of a facility. I forget how many, 15, 16 buildings, let alone the scale of each of the buildings. You're going to say yes to that. And I think there's also an element to it to where, you know, if you take Cleetus, the personality, and sort of set it off to the side, And Garrett, the man himself, when the cameras aren't rolling, is looking at that and be like, I'd be foolish not to take this, or I can't afford not to, or, oh man, what's it going to do to my community if I had this opportunity and it turns out I said no, or whatever. I'm not saying I have any insight into that thought process. What I'm saying is that there is an element of, when you do create content, of I I feel like I should do this. And I think a lot of his fans wouldn't have cared one way or the other, but like again, when it's your business, you're like, I kind of have to. And again, because it bears repeating, I'm not saying that's what went through his head. I'm just saying it's a thing, right? So while I'm bummed he's not, while I'm bummed, something just made a weird noise. Anywho, while I'm bummed that he's not doing any more big, or he's not going to be able to do the big tracks in O'Reilly's. He's mentioned he's going to be doing more truck stuff, and frankly, I think the trucks are really interesting just because they're different. It's like going and watching a modified race, right? It's just completely different to what your brain associates with stock car racing. So that's pretty good. Also, the aero on the trucks is, you know, some would say tricky, but it's another seat. We know he's buying a late model, not a super, late model pro car. So seat time is the friend. And the O'Reilly dream ain't done. You know, who the hell knows? Like, he did say at the end of his sort of, hey guys, I didn't get approved video, that he could show some things in the trucks, in ARCA and all that, and they could say, okay, now you've shown us enough, without ever setting foot in another O'Reilly's car. Sorry, I should do this pop out. There we go. There. I have both chats up. So, at the end of the day, the question remains, is this a good thing or it is a bad thing? To me, it would only be a bad thing if this was NASCAR saying, okay, enough is enough. You know, right or wrong, they think you're a YouTuber. We're not letting you in our second biggest series. Until you put in X amount of races or done Y amount of laps or what have you. Sorry, 1 second. At any rate, sorry about that. Dog was being a bit of an asshole. Where were we? My backtrack. So just to kind of recap, and I'll give you my final thought on it. You know, I don't think Cleetus was comfortable in the truck. I don't think he was comfortable in the O'Reilly's car. I don't think it's completely devastating because I believe he will eventually get back to O'Reilly, especially on the big tracks. I think they're going to try to put in something at a short track or maybe he gets approval for intermediate tracks, based on his performance in ARCA and the trucks moving forward. But because, again, I don't think this was the plan. I think he felt, I don't want to say he felt pressured into doing it, because he would have been just fine even if he didn't. But he felt an obligation maybe to the fans to, well, because of them I'm here, because of them I'm getting this opportunity. I have to see it through, even though I think it might be a bit quick. So I don't necessarily see this as a bad thing. Again, it's a bummer, but I don't see it being a bad thing. Thing is, though, how do I put this? Thing is, though, I'll even put it to you from me personally, just watching this whole process unfold. Is that when he got the truck offer, I thought, okay, that kind of sort of makes sense. He doesn't have a ton of time in ARCA, but the time he does have in ARCA, he showed market improvement, and the truck is a logical step. And I did also want to touch on the one thing Cleetus was saying. Excuse me. Again, in that video he posted, he mentioned that the super speedways are the easiest tracks to drive, and they progressively get harder the shorter the track, just because there's more inputs, more things to be aware of. At Talladega, Daytona, and even in ARCA cars, some tracks like Charlotte or Michigan, maybe Kansas, I'm not 100% sure, but on a lot of these shorter tracks, because of the I shouldn't say lack of horsepower, they still make a little over 500. But the amount of downforce they have, you can be wide open and attack corners way more than you can in an ARCA car. Way more in an ARCA car than you can in a truck or an O'Reilly's a Cup car is a completely different animal to any other stock car on whether it be short, whether it be late models, whether it be anything, just because of the nature of the way those cars are designed. So I think NASCAR, I think NASCAR wants to see him do well, or meet a certain expectation on the harder tracks, because while it's easier to race on the big tracks, if you make a mistake, if you get in a wreck, the severity of that mistake, that wreck, is a lot higher speeds than it is at a short track. Also, you learn sort of the racecraft, the looking after your tires. You're in more control of more things within the car, if that makes any sense, right? At Daytona, you're wide ass open. Obviously, you're in the draft, but the biggest thing you're manipulating is the gas pedal and the steering wheel, obviously. At some of the bigger intermediate tracks, you're lifting into corners. The shorter the track gets, now you have to brake. Now you have to understand what braking does to the steering. As we jokingly say in like our sim race, I shouldn't say we jokingly say, it's absolutely the case. But when we do in our sim racing, when I do it with the boys, the front tires can only do 100% of something. Like, just picture a character in a video game where you have 100 hit points. It can do 100% braking or 100% steering, obviously, given the parameters. But it can't do both. So if you're 50% on the brakes, you can only really do as 50% as far as steering. And obviously, that's a sliding scale. So being able to learn what braking does, or what all that, how it affects the car, how it causes the car to do this, arrow tight, arrow loose, like all these little things that are at a much slower speed, that'll work towards him just being a better driver. And let's face it, at the end of the day, all we want to do is see him do well. You know, as fun as it is to see him in an O'Reilly's car, how many times do we want to watch him just ride around in 33rd place? That's not the end goal. You know, too many videos like that, and it's like, oh, you know, that's why, like I said, if you know, at the end of the day, we want to see him do well. Because in YouTube, a certain type of video, especially if you're doing like motorsport stuff, only has a certain amount of shelf life, right? You know, there's a reason why he started with Leroy, went to Ruby, went to another car, progressed this car, that car, mullet, bing, 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 right? Like, while Leroy is still amazing and awesome to see when he races it on the channel, there may have been Leroy fatigue. That's why all these channels introduce new cars as often as they possibly can, because it keeps things fresh. So, I don't know how much I don't know the viewer's tolerance or patience for having another video where he's 10 races down the road and the best he finishes is 31st. I don't know. Is the viewer going to stick around? He has a very loyal fan base. Maybe. But at the end of the day, we want to see him do well. We want to see him progress. We want to see him, you know, maybe potentially at some point, like the race at Rockingham, he finished 4th in ARCA. As a fan, that's awesome. If you're a fan of a guy, you want to see him do well. The process only takes you so far, especially if your goal is to be quote-unquote entertaining. I'm not saying not do it. I'm not saying that's not a reason to do it. I'm just saying, like, Garrett is a very, very smart individual. He has figured social media out. I think that's safe to say. But I don't know. There's a bunch of you watching. I want to know what you guys think. You know, obviously it's a bummer, but do you think this will? Because frankly, again, watching the ARCA race, it's really encouraging. Let's go watch him do some more ARCA. I'm not saying a win is imminent. I also wouldn't be surprised if he contended for one fairly soon. But what I am saying is that he's very comfortable in that car now. When you're comfortable in a car, especially a race car, your ability to sort of now every little thing isn't, oh God, what's that? What's that? Oh no, am I losing control? Am I this? Am I that? You start to understand what the car is doing and making adjustments in the how do I put this? You're adjusting based on now you're feeling the car as it is as a racer, as opposed to feeling it as someone who's new to it, being like, I'm out of control, when you're really not. And we have our favorite YouTube username over on, you guessed it, YouTube. Satan's Rage K1F. Hey, what's going on, my man? We're doing all right. Greg, unfortunately, his day job has been something else this week, and he's unable to join us, which basically means all of you are my co-hosts, so don't be shy. You guys are right there You are the co-host tonight. And I'll even put you back up there. So, oh yeah, the Mets are losing. What I'm trying to kind of sort of say in kind of a long roundabout, winding, not at all concise and to the point kind of way is, I want to see Cleetus succeed, and I think everyone involved in this endeavor wants to see him succeed, and that includes NASCAR. Now, maybe a guy like Tommy Baldwin could give a crap and just hate, sees his blood pressure go up every time the dude Cleetus' name is mentioned. But for the most part, every single person involved understands that if Cleetus does well, Cleetus is successful. Not only does it obviously work for Cleetus, it's a home run for NASCAR. It's an absolute scenario where if you can draw a ton of eyeballs to ARCA because Cleetus is there, those are the next guys. Now, I understand there's a lot of guys who go... Now, I understand there's a lot of guys who go from something like the Cars Tour right into trucks or right into O'Reilly's or what have you. Not here for the ladder, but if you look at the NASCAR ladder, the touring series at least, I guess technically the Wayland modified series would be below ARCA, maybe on par with it. If you're a modified guy or gal, I'm not throwing shade. I just don't know where it lands in the hierarchy, or if it's just its own thing over here where all the best modified drivers go. I'm not sure. Hunter over on YouTube asks, how do you think he will get better? Well, if you listen to anyone talk and you watch any of Cleetus' videos, most people, and this isn't me speaking, most of the stuff I've watched on this subject this week specifically, because I just wanted to get everyone's thoughts before I sort of came out on and gave mine, was Cleetus is immensely talented. You just look at all the stuff he does. I know drag racing doesn't feel all that complicated, but it also takes a skill set to go over 200 miles an hour in the quarter mile. And he started there and took arguably the hardest route, being the stick shift class. But he got better and better and better. He won FL2K in that class last year. He has talent as a driver. You watch that progression when he was working with Vaughn Gittin Jr., learning how to drift. And to paraphrase Dale Jr., he understands where the limit is on anything with four wheels and tires. And he can get right up to that limit faster than most. So he has talent. How he can get better? The first thing is just experience. Feeling what the car does and what the air does. What inputs do. How, whether you just slam on the brakes or you progressively play. All these little things that are going to come and learn the attitude of those specific cars, because they do drive different than a street car. I know they're stock cars, but they're optimized to do a thing, and that thing isn't necessarily driving like a street car. It's going and making left turns. So it's optimized for that. So it reacts differently to different inputs. But being around different people, understanding that, it's like everything else in sort of the motorsports realm, right? You're learning the inputs. And I'm not saying he needs to learn what the steering wheel does, right? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that different inputs at different times and how the car reacts and all this, how it reacts with someone next to you, how it reacts on new tires versus how it reacts on old tires, how it's on a newish surface like Rockingham or on an old beat up surface. All of that stuff, SVG calls it the notebook with the team and how they set up the car. But the driver needs a mental notebook too. So just number one, experience will help him get better. Knowing, instead of speed running what he did with O'Reilly and the truck to that extent, was, he tested and he was in a race shortly thereafter. I'm not saying that shouldn't have happened. I'm not saying it was a bad idea. I'm not saying it was negative in any way, shape, or form. What I'm saying is that sort of going to Rockingham, and I think this was done on purpose, not to make Cleetus fail, but to expose any of his deficiencies as a stock car driver, or NASCAR O'Reilly's driver. Because it's such a difficult place in the best of times, given that it has new pavement on it, is the window from being completely in control and badass fast and losing grip or snapping the back end or what have you is a very fine line. So any mistakes or any, how do I put this, deficiencies in the technique, the racecraft, all of that, where it might be hidden on like a super speedway or even a big intermediate track or something like that, Rockingham's going to shine a big old beacon on it. And that's why I think they chose it. Not to make sure Cleetus failed, but to say, all right, buddy, here you go. You want to do it? Here's the toughest challenge you're going to have. Let's see what you got. The other thing is that he's going to get seat time with RCR. I don't know when that's going to be, but he's going to get, at bare minimum, he's going to get seat time in their simulators with their, not instructors, but their team helping him, saying, okay, where he doesn't have to worry about wadding up a 6-figure race car. You know what I mean? Also, I'll say from a, how do I put this? I've done some very low-level grassroots like SCCA, street stock. I forget the exact name of the class when I did it. But every lap you get better. And that's how I am as a driver when I'm on track. I'm not a race car driver by any means, but I do have access to track time. I've been on a track more than most, I can say, And I'm not a, all right, let's find the limit immediately kind of guy. I'm a, okay, let's brake early. I can brake a little later. Oh, that was a little too much, or maybe I had to, easing into it and all that. So reps, time and repetition, right? If you've ever played golf, the more you do it and the more you have people pointing out, here's the perfect golf analogy that I think applies to Cleetus, right? We know he has a pretty sizable amount of talent. How much talent, we don't know, because he hasn't been able to really get up there. Same thing applies in golf. People have a natural talent or a talent based on their swing or whatever. Eye-to-hand coordination. You get the idea. So let's just say the talent is here. This is peak, maximum talent. This is as good as you will ever be at whether it be golf or as a race car driver. And over here, this slider is where you're actually at, but it's experience. So let's just say you're a golfer and you're golfing once a month. Well, you might get to here, right? You could be here, but you're not playing enough. You don't have enough experience. You're not putting in the reps. You play less than that, goes down. You start to play once a week, you get to here. Twice a week, the more you do something, the better, the closer you are going to get to your natural ceiling, right? And everybody has a natural ceiling in terms of pick a sport, right? Baseball, eye-to-hand coordination and quote-unquote fast hands. Eyesight is a big part of that. In motorsports, it's the same thing. It's reps, seeing, spotting an apex, being able to understand, the car behind you, what it's been, say you're coming up on a car that you're trying to pass. What's the attitude of that car? Have they been in quote unquote control? Have they been are they driving like you're not there? Are there, or are they sort of all over the place? Are they sort of, unpredictable, so to speak? Or does it look like they're barely hanging on? And all of these things go into the computer, and you have to realize, okay, if I'm going to pass this guy, I can't make it. I either have to be decisive and do it almost immediately, to where if he freaks out and makes a mistake, I'm not caught up in it. Or you have to be extra special careful, to where you're on a straight, you set up the pass, you're alongside him into the braking zone. They have no, they absolutely know you're there, and that sort of stuff. I think NASCAR's biggest fear with Cleetus was that he's going to be the cause of the big one at Talladega or Daytona. And all of the goodwill, all of the hype, all of the, what's the word? All of the good that Cleetus being in NASCAR would be erased in one race. The fact that he makes him, and it wouldn't even, to be 100% honest, it wouldn't even have to be his fault. If he was the car, let's just say someone bumps him a little too aggressively and he spins, takes out 10 other cars. That's going to give the haters everything they need. That's going to give anybody who does not like this idea, does not like him being a part of NASCAR, it's going to take away some of the credibility of, because believe it or not, he does have some credibility of being there and potentially being pretty good at it. It's that legitimacy factor, right? Like when you're watching a movie or something, you want the person in the movie believable for the character they're playing. I'm not saying he's playing the character of a stock car driver, but he has a legitimate claim to say, I've done this. I'm decent enough. And again, it gives people the hope that he might win something. I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying it gives people the hope of it. And like, okay, when they see the commercial with Cleetus in it for NASCAR and the Hell Yeah campaign and all that sort of stuff, it's like, yeah, I get behind that. That's awesome. That's freaking great. That's it. As opposed to, oh, there's the guy who wrecked at Daytona. And I am not saying he would have done that. I'm just saying that was the fear. And NASCAR just wants to see him do better on the more difficult tracks. Because if you can improve and do better and have results on what is more difficult, the easier stuff, or the not as difficult tracks, become easier. The risk of something big happening isn't there. And that sort of stuff. And that's all. And at the end of the day, that's kind of where I think everyone is sort of landing on this. Pretty much anyone with a pulse who understands NASCAR and what it's been through the last 10 years or whatever, NASCAR has been devoid of personality. Nothing against the drivers who've been racing in it. Nothing against their talent or who they are as individuals or as people or any of that. None of it. But it wasn't the 90s, the early 2000s. And I think there's a resurgence of personality. Obviously, Cleetus is a massive personality. But even outside of that, you have, again, NASCAR purists' favorite punching bag. Rightfully so in a lot of cases, but entertaining nevertheless. Carson Hocevar. Who I genuinely like. I mean, I get he makes some pretty some, let's just say, Hosevarian moves sometimes, but he's entertaining to watch. He's got a personality. He's not going to sit here and say the right thing or do the right thing all the freaking time like a robot. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the drivers who do that, but it's just, if every driver gives the same interview or has the same take on everything, you know, I can't say I'm a huge Bubba Wallace fan. Nothing really against the dude other than I don't jive with him. Whenever he sits here and says something about someone or something or whatever, I don't like it, but now I'm interested. Not necessarily, because let's face it, generally speaking, when you watch a sport, you're watching for your favorite guy to win, or for the guy you really don't like to not win. You know? And then you have guys like SVG, right? Guys who completely different path to NASCAR than pretty much any other driver. And combined with the success that he has had on road courses. And now there's this dude's pretty cool. He's got a pretty decent personality. Obviously, the dude can drive, you know, in that sort of dominating fashion that he does on road courses. Or they tune in for accidents. I mean, there is the carnage element. Well, let's just face it. There's a reason why something like BeamNG is a popular driving sim or game or whatever you want to call it. Because of the real accident physics and why people who do the reels where those cars crash are so successful, right? There's sort of a morbid curiosity in all of that we all have. Hunter goes, I think he needs more wins in ARCA. I agree, right? Like I don't know how to say this without making it sound like I sound exactly like the people I was admonishing who were hating on Cleetus, because I don't know enough. But Richard Childress, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kevin Harvick, Greg Biffle all saw something in this guy to where they wanted to put their names, their necks on the line. Maybe not on the line, but they very publicly backed this guy and what he was trying to do. And for people who aren't at the level, you know, Harvick, multiple-time Cup champion, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is Dale Earnhart Jr. You know, all of Richard Childress. I mean, the dude has more NASCAR history in his museum than 75% of the field. You know, all of these people were in his corner. But I remember distinctly thinking when he did the truck thing, like, okay, it's the next step. Kind of makes sense. And then I remember hearing the RCR thing. Like, when my friend first told me about it, I was like, oh, RCR is going to do a truck or an ARCA car? That's kind of cool. And it's the O'Reilly series. You know? I had faith that Cleetus wasn't going to embarrass himself and all that other sort of stuff, but I do remember thinking, this is all happening really fast. From like 2 years ago, not even thinking about it, to now being, you know, on the first step to, you know, being a step away from the Cup Series. I don't think he's anywhere near the Cup Series, or nor does he really feel like he wants to, or what have you. 5 years from now, who knows? But, you know, between doing more truck stuff like he said he was doing, between the more ARCA stuff, and between that super late model, pro late model. Sorry, it's the way my brain works. Like, they're the same cars except the super pro models. The super late models have a more powerful engine. But like pro is also pro. At any rate, let's see here. Tamas, Tahmas. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, buddy. I'm sorry if I'm not. He goes, Cleetus was never getting approved after all the crying they did after the RCR deal. And he did exactly what Junior said would be a win for him. And then Junior pulls the not approved BS. I don't think Junior or Harvick was really a fan. It was more of a show and positive PR for NASCAR. Could be. I'm not there. I can't. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. It could be. How do I put this? Just from someone who listened to, we'll just say Junior, for example. Just listening to him, I think he was cautiously on board with Cleetus. I don't know. But apparently they talk at a ton. Cleetus and Dale. You know, Cleetus texts him and all this other sort of stuff. So, like, they're all in such a tough spot. Because, you know, obviously Harvick, NASCAR on Fox. Junior being Junior, but also a broadcaster for NASCAR. And these guys, like, they're all in a tough spot. Because they can't sit here and say NASCAR's full of shit, right? I mean, they can. I don't necessarily, you know, I don't know how, you know, Junior might, but he seems fairly reserved and reserves those opinions for a more private setting than his podcast. Harvick, on the other hand, I don't know. I mean, he's got Keelan. I mean, I guess since Keelan's with Toyota now, he doesn't have to be the financier of it anymore. But, you know, that NASCAR on Fox check sure does feel pretty good when you got a kid speed running on talent alone the grassroots levels of NASCAR. Hunter, I'm on Cleetus' side. I think we all are. Ooh. Air bubble. Oofa. I think we all want to see the dude succeed. I mean, I think the only person who doesn't... I shouldn't even say that. Because apparently Tommy Baldwin was if you watch that, he was involved in the process. Or at least talked to Biffle when they were trying to get the ARCA deal together and stuff like that. I think Tommy Baldwin's fucking biggest thing is that he has kids and friends and family in the sort of NASCAR ladder. And it chaps his ass that they're, you know, doing what they need to do and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, grinding and, you know, he does have, quote unquote, a name in NASCAR, you know, Tommy Baldwin Racing and stuff. And I know there's been friction with him in NASCAR and stock car race. You know, the dude, I'll give him all the credit in the world. You don't have to you don't have to try real hard to see what Baldwin's thinking at all. And that's in a certain way refreshing. But I do think, you know, and I can kind of understand it. It's just like, dude, he's here. He's not going anywhere. He's going to race in some division of NASCAR. He's going to eventually start to progress. Now, whether that's going to fit with Tommy Baldwin's timeline, I have no idea. But it's just like, there's something off about it. Freddie Kraft, who was the one who brought this, you know, he's probably the Cleetus hater flag flyer. His stance, that's a different kettle of wax that I don't really want to get into, but, you know, with content creation and stuff like that. But, like, I think he had the right idea, he had the right idea, or at least good intentions. He said it not necessarily maybe in the best way, and then, you know, was in that situation where a lot of people have, where they, no, here's what I was trying to say. blah, 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 right? Like, I think we've all been there, right? Like, with a conversation or something, whether you have a conversation with, like, a friend group or the chat or, like, a group chat or your significant other. No, I didn't mean it that way. Like, let's see here. Thomas, I think deep down they really aren't a fan of influencers racing. Yes, 100% agree with that. And they didn't think he should be in O'Reilly's. They wasn't saying how they really felt about him being there. I mean, I think there's also a generational thing, especially when you start looking into the whole notion of influencers or content creators or whatever the hell you want to talk about it. Or whatever you want to call it. Because to a lot of people of a certain age, this whole notion of being able to make a lot of money and notoriety and stuff on the internet, which I'm old enough to have seen the dawn of, so to speak, as at least from a consumer perspective, not as a military network thing. Which was a new thing, and then there's the whole marketing side of it, because kind of at the end of the day, doing YouTube is part marketing, part being entertaining, putting an entertaining product out there, or what have you. But there is pushback or a lack of understanding in the older generations, the more conservative, and I don't mean it conservative from a political standpoint, just in a, more like, you wake up, you go, you do your 9 to 5, you work the construction job, you work hard, you work your way up, and then blah, blah, blah. Like that level, that old school mindset. And that's still a very good mindset to have in any job, really. Anyway, getting sidetracked to where someone can just go turn on a camera and put it on the internet, and you're making money on that. How? And they don't, people don't understand, sponsorship deals or how ad revenue works or the economies of scale, when on an individual view, you make less than a penny. But if you're doing millions of views, it stacks up. I do agree with you in a sense that a lot of these guys didn't want Cleetus to be what broke the influencer dam, so to speak. I do think there was an element of NASCAR sort of putting their foot down in a certain level. Not that they needed to put their foot down, but to sort of send a clear message to other influencers who are like, I want to give this a try. Because I'm willing to wager, again, I have no inside knowledge or what have you into this, but I have to imagine after Cleetus last year when he started doing this, and this year when it seemed like he was successful is not the right. He's been successful with it, but I don't know how. Basically, they saw that Cleetus was sort of like, oh, his, subscriber base and blah 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 blah, and he obviously, and then there's some Joe Blow creator out there who's like, I'm a better driver, I can drive, I have a social media following that's pretty damn decent. Let me get my approval or try to get approval. I have to imagine there are people, and NASCAR's like, okay, enough. There's not many Cleetus McFarlands out there for obvious reasons. But there's also not many Cleetus McFarlands out there who drove all the different types of things that Cleetus has driven. Racing boats, tractor pulls, that bog racing stuff, the Crown Vic stuff, the drifting stuff, the burnout stuff, and understanding that all that latter stuff requires immense car control. Understanding where the limit of the car is and how far you can push beyond it in a certain situation. And I think that's part of what he's learning with the NASCAR stuff now. He knows where the limit is. he knows there's a certain amount he can kind of push past. He hasn't figured out the calculator device that figures that out for a given situation on pick a track and at whatever time during a run. But again, I think the whole notion of content creation as a job, whole notion of content creation as a legitimate career, it's obviously softening because more and more and more people are doing it. I think it was I forget what it was, but I don't know the specific dates, but I think it was like 2019, 2020, early 2020, where there were like 500 or 600 million subscriber YouTube channels, active YouTube channels, and now that's numbers like has ballooned by 8,000, maybe even more. Point being, a lot of, whether it be new content creators, whether it be your traditional media sort of embracing the YouTube life, so to speak, and everything. But I mean, I get it in my day in life. They're like, wait, you make money doing what? How do you make money? Who wants to listen to you? Who wants to do that? Blah, 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 blah. You know, from some of my relatives and stuff who don't really understand what it is I'm doing. Now, this isn't my only source of income. I'm not. Shifting lanes ain't that yet. But a lot of the lessons I learned here, I do apply in my day job, which, shockingly enough, involves marketing. Thomas, again, over on YouTube, goes, for sure, most sponsor money goes to influencers now. They get more attention and are more relatable than the pros. It's been like... It's like Ben Milliken fishing Bassmaster. I agree with that view. I don't follow a lot of fishing. I am sorry. But yeah, because I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a little thing here. Advertisers have figured out that if Joe YouTuber, who maybe doesn't have the total number of viewers, according to the Nielsen ratings, that XYZ show on CBS gets every Thursday night, they have figured out that the people who subscribe to YouTube channels, the people who watch the videos over and over, the hit rate with advertising, because these people, how do I put this? Because people, again, they're more relatable, as you said, Thomas. People can envision being friends with the people they're seeing on the YouTube channel. You know? So it's almost like a friend recommending a, Aura or Delete Me or Manscaped or, World of Warships. Like, you get the idea. It's like a, it's like, again, it's more of a recommendation than a, hey, people are paying me to tell you this. There's the understanding that they're getting paid for the sponsorship post, but there's a more built-in trust than, say, seeing your favorite YouTuber push a product and, I don't even know. I haven't watched much in the form of broadcast television outside of sports in forever. Right? I view commercials on TV when I'm watching like a race or a game. Is commercials are something to be fast forwarded through. So generally speaking, if a race comes on or a sporting event comes on that I want to watch, I'll pause it. I'll go do some other things. I'll come back. Usually an hour or two. I don't have to watch commercials. I understand that's weird for someone who basically, is sitting on a platform where they make all of their money through advertising. It is what it is. Thomas's point is Cleetus and Ben Milliken's fan base is 10 times bigger than the most popular driver or tournament angler. Hit the nail on the head there, yeah. And that's the thing. That's the biggest thing, right? Is bringing eyeballs in to the sport or to the whatever. You know, you could make an argument that you could sort of position this in the sense that Cleetus Racing in NASCAR is a sponsored gig. You know, because NASCAR benefits from when Cleetus benefits in NASCAR, because obviously he gets those videos get what? 1 million, 2 million, 3 million views, right? So he's obviously doing very well, and they're usually an hour plus, which is just what you want to do in YouTube if you can do it. And he's obviously bringing fan base. He's bringing a fan base to not even the show, the support series. Fans who I've seen so many comments of, I'm new to NASCAR, or more often than not, it's usually, I haven't watched NASCAR in years, but because Cleetus is doing it, I'll tune into the ARCA races he does, or the truck races, or the O'Reilly race, or whatever, you know. And that's one of the biggest things I actually wanted to touch on was you're bringing these fans in, whether they're brand spanking new or they left for whatever reason. Now NASCAR has an opportunity here, especially where Cleetus is living right now. ARCA, trucks, you know, short tracks and O'Reillys. They have a massive opportunity to sit here and say, because they did a race vlog with him for Rockingham. NASCAR did. On NASCAR's YouTube channel. So you know what they're doing there. This is a golden opportunity to sit here and say, okay, Cleetus is at a race. Let's pair him up with XYZ driver for a video. You know, Cleetus has said he doesn't really have interest in doing this full time. Because even if he could be as successful as we all dream he could be, he will still not make the money that he makes on the social media side of things. If you think just in the ad revenue of what he's making is impressive as hell, I guarantee you his sponsor deals would make your eyes water. I'd wager he's getting anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000 on a conservative every video in sponsorship deals. You know, and yeah, that's to Thomas's point. That's where the sponsors want to put their money, where the eyeballs are. You know, we've said it numerous times, and it's not just to be self-serving. It's the fact that in over-the-air conventional TV, over-the-air, the way we grew up, I don't know how old a lot of you are, but if you're my age, in your early 40s, you know, I grew up with appointment television. You know, your favorite show was on 8 o'clock on Thursdays. You made sure to be in front of your TV at 8 o'clock on Thursdays to watch your show. Then recording technology got better, or we started using it, was probably more the case. You know, and then as we started doing that more and more and more, YouTube came along as a place for people to post their funny little videos. Then it became monetized, and people are like, hold on a second. And now it is the path forward. You know. At any rate, Sames Rage goes, how long is he going to do this for? As long as the easy, stupid, catch-all answer is, as long as he wants to. The slightly more serious answer to that is, I think I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's racing in the Daytona 500 itself, which is a 5 to 7 year prospect, depending on how much racing he does between now and then. I don't know if that's the end goal, or I don't know if that's the end goal, or if it's just as long as it's fun. You know, if it becomes too much work or too much effort or too much hassle or he has to deal with too much shit. You know, again, he could do 1 or 2 more seasons of this, say, I did it, been there, done that, go back doing what he was doing. He's going to be just fine. You know, so he's going to do it as long as he enjoys it. I'm guessing because now there's now a challenge aspect of it. Of, okay, they want me to do this, I'm going to show them. You know, plus there's an element of, hell, I just finished 4th place at the Rock in an ARCA car. I could win a race. You know, I mean, I would sit here and say, seeing as how he just turned 30 years old, I would be mildly surprised if he was still doing it much. I'd be surprised if he was still doing the NASCAR stuff at 40. You know, 2 kids. They're going to be in, you know, I don't know exactly how old Rip is, but he's got the 2 kids. They're going to be their sports, whether or not there's, you know, whether his son or daughter end up doing racing or your more conventional sports, soccer, baseball, that stuff. All that stuff's coming soon for him. You know, and it's all well and good to spend 3-4 days a week or whatever it is up at RCR and get the time in. But I think he's going to end up with, you know, the work-life balance, right? It does. You watch what he does, and you don't think work-life balance. Because any of us would kill to do what he does and make the money he does. But it is work. You know, it is stuff that is, in a way, taking him away from time with his family. Unless, obviously, he's doing stuff with his family and it works within the business. So, yeah, who knows? Dennis Penner goes, you must talk with no pauses. I could try. My brain doesn't work that fast. If I try to, case in point, if I try to take it from here directly to here, I don't know what this meant, but if I try to do that, I English become a second language kind of a deal, because my brain is going to be on the 4th word, my mouth is only going to be on the 2nd word, and then I'm going to hear it and try to do different things and all this other. I will try to not have as many pauses. We are doing it live, so you know, I do need moments as much as, say right there. Like, I do need moments to think, and I have to turn the mic sensitivity down. Otherwise, I'm pretty confident you'd hear the hamster wheel going on in my head, trying to assemble, you know, words and phrases and things of that nature. Thomas, people think other drivers are more deserving of a ride in O'Reilly's, but they can pick up the phone and get a full-time sponsor whenever they want. Right, like, there, you see this that is the modern motorsport. That is modern motorsports in a nutshell, and that is um, the modern motorsports in a nutshell is if you have two drivers and they're both say approved to race in pick a race, whatever race you want, two drivers, and you're a small team and you're not financing it yourself, or you don't have a team sponsor. If you have the two drivers and this one is immensely talented, he gives you the best chance to win a race. He's arguably done more, he or she, and he deserves the seat in the car because he gives you the best chance. He's earned it, all that other sort of stuff. But he's bringing you half of the sponsorship dollars of driver number two, who's pretty dang talented, could win you the race, but he's bringing way more sponsorship dollars, so that might even mean two races, or a second car, or just the operation, or it affords you an opportunity to say, okay, we're going to do this race. We have this sponsorship money. That keeps the lights on for another 4 weeks or month or whatever. A lot of times like case in point, Lance Stroll in Formula One. Now we know now that he has kept his job because Daddy bought the team and Aston Martin as a whole. But when he first got that seat, Force India was in a world of trouble. Financially, legally. They didn't have the finances. It was either we might have to sell the team or, oh, look, Lawrence Stroll in a dump truck full of money just arrived. I guess we'll put his kid in a seat and have the finances to go racing. That's just how motorsports work. Is it fair? Probably not. You know, Lewis Hamilton loves talking about how many jobs his dad had to work to support his racing career, which is incredibly admirable. But at the end of the day, he got in with the McLaren program, and people like Kevin Harvick's kid, Keelan, on talent. I want to say talent alone, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the kid, but Kevin Harvick's also his father, and I'm not saying he's trading on his father's name. I'm just saying his father happens to have more resources, especially in the motorsports community, than most. He's also, a millionaire, which usually a good way to start, especially in motor racing and things like that. So, yeah, no script. No script. I usually have something resembling an outline. And when I sat down to write said outline for tonight, I looked at the time and, oh crap, I have to cook dinner. I have to shower. I did all. And then the next thing I know, and the stream's starting late. Wonderful. Yeah, it is what it is. But I think I'll close with this. Just a summation of everything is to answer the question that the title asks: is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? I think in a weird way, it is a good thing from the perspective of making Cleetus the best NASCAR driver he could possibly be. It's only a bad thing in the sense that that it's a bummer. And again, watching Cleetus' content with the O'Reilly stuff, his reaction video to the being denied, I don't think he's that broken up about it. I could be wrong. I don't have a degree in psychology. I do not talk to the man. But it's like I said, it's a good thing because the dude. Hey, no worries, Hunter. Like, how do I put this? You're all welcome to ask questions, say whatever, do well, not do whatever, not whatever, but you get the idea. Like, the whole premise of this show is that usually we have three presenters. It's me, it's Greg, it's you guys. That's why we do it this way and are not just another pre-recorded podcast. We enjoy having you guys in chat. It's been nice not to take anything away from JDM Steve, who just showed up. It's nice to have new faces in addition to our usuals, our regulars. My end goal and vision for this is to be at a point where we have kind of a loose talking point, and then we go from there. It's first and foremost, it's an automotive show. So you guys want to talk Cleetus? I'm here for it. If you want to talk about NASCAR as a whole, motorsports as a whole, or you have a favorite form of motorsport that you want to talk about, there's I would say 63% chance I know a little something about it. I'm not saying I'm an expert or I'm an insider. It's just I'm a motorsport nerd. That's what we want. The best shows we do and the most fun we have doing this is when we're just sitting here. Greg and I sit down and we come up with topics and how are we going to talk about them? Who's going to do what? What stance do you have? Okay, don't tell me too much because I want to react live on the show. Sorry. But to finish that thought, the best shows we have is when we're literally just sitting here riffing with chat. Talking to you guys, answering your questions, having your input. I don't know how many times I say it monthly. It's a lot. I'm not an expert in all things. I know a little bit about a lot, so I can have a conversation about a lot, especially as it pertains to, cars and motorsport and things like that. So, like, if you just, I'll say this. If you came here for the Cleetus talk, that's great. Welcome. Glad to have you. Red Bull, the sips of champion. Well, I have a catch in the back of my throat. Don't you dare say it, Steve. But yeah, I mean, like I said, just because I have a title and a thumbnail doesn't necessarily mean that's all we want to talk about. I'm sure Steve is 5 minutes away, maybe even 30 seconds away from suggesting some sort of off-the-wall and slightly unhinged vehicle in which to swap a K engine into. Hunter's like, yeah, or he gets injured. Yep. Hopefully not. Hunter's like, I'm here for NASCAR. And yeah, I do. I would. And here's the thing, Hunter. Not so much Greg, because the nature of his job, when he has weekends, it's family time or veg out time. But I try to watch not all of the races. I try to watch all of the Cup races. I don't have that kind of time to try to watch. Well, I guess I have a ton of time now in the Formula One, but like the F1 stuff, the sports car stuff, IndyCar, and NASCAR is all kind of the stuff I want to do. But I do try to watch all of the races. So even if you and Hunter, even if you see a thumbnail and it's not directly about NASCAR, and you're like, nah, maybe I'll pop in. Feel free to pop in, and if it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, ask me a question about the race. I can't guarantee you that I'll answer it right then and there, but I'll acknowledge it. It'll be something to talk about, and that's kind of where we want to go with the show that we've been doing for 2 years. The whole reason we are called Shifting Lanes Garage is, and this is a fairly loosely connected thread, but in my head, this is a digital equivalent of a bunch of dudes. Attaboy, Dave. I remember those are really. I remember watching the first one and how cool that was, and like how it was just like, finally someone's doing something. While the world shuts down. But we're called Shifting Lanes Garage because it's meant to be like a digital space where a bunch of dudes are coming around, sitting around the garage on the weekend. And while we're not necessarily working on someone's car, we are talking. And guys in the garage, they talk about all manners of things. We try to keep it around cars and that sort of stuff. But Bill will show up. I don't want to talk about blah. Or, and he's like, hey, did y'all see the race this Sunday? And so and everything like that. And like, I'm telling you, the show and I don't know, Hunter. Actually, Hunter, if you're still there, tell me who your favorite driver is in NASCAR. Steve, I'm disappointed about Cleet not racing in Busch. Head for the mountains. And yeah, anywho. But he understands. But he'll... Yeah, that's the thing. NASCAR wasn't like, that's enough, get out. It was, hey man, you're having fun, you're doing well. Show us a little bit more in ARCA. You've done a grand total of like 6 laps in a truck in anger in a race. Show us a little over there. Because like we've talked about at length tonight, NASCAR wants as much Cleetus McFarland as they can get their hands on. I just don't... I think the vast majority of their decision making is, yes, we want to set a precedent for future drivers. But I also think they are thinking of setting him up for the most amount of success that he can possibly have. And I'm not talking about like, hey, make that restrictor plate on old Cleet's car, 1,000th of an inch bigger than everyone else's. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about making sure he goes through enough of a process to not make a massive mistake in the early parts of his career that derails all of the goodwill that they've done so far. Arguably, between Cleetus, between the start of this season, between, a number of different factors, NASCAR's back on the upswing. And again, you could equate that to a whole mess of different factors. And Cleetus is only going to accelerate that. So, making sure it is in everyone's best interest that he is as equipped as humanly possible to do as well as he possibly can in a timeline that isn't ridiculous. Personally, I see him doing his thing and doing the ARCA stuff, doing a little more truck stuff, and then next year being truck, a little bit of ARCA, and maybe getting a one off, and then probably getting 1 or 2 off. If you look at where Cleetus is now to where he was when he started in the ARCA car, it's night and day. I'm not saying it's going to be that easy with each level, because each level removes a little bit of downforce and ups the horsepower. Yeah. So Thomas goes, can we call it the Busch series here? Xfinity or rallies will never sound right to me. I'm a huge proponent of renaming it one of two things. Just go back to the Grand National Series, which I know the early days of the Cup Series was the Grand National Series, and that might confuse, Korea veterans. Thank you for your service. And I do not mean that in a joking fashion at all. I just mean it from an age perspective. Or, and I learned about this the other day, call it the Sportsman Series. Because that's what it was. That's what it evolved from. Because Cup Series, Truck Series, ARCA Series. It's the ARCA Menard Series, the Craftsman Truck Series. I'm a little embarrassed to know I don't know the title sponsor for the Cup Series. But why not have it be the O'Reilly's Grand National Series or Sportsman Series? It's a name. But constantly changing it because of this stupid sponsor annoys the crap out of me. Because we're sitting here and we're saying that Jesse Love won the 2025 O'Reilly Series when it wasn't the O'Reilly Series at the time. Hunter replied to his favorite driver, number 77, Carson. I'm right there with you. He's. I'll fully admit, and if this makes me a NASCAR casual, so be it. Probably number one for me is SVG. Right behind him is Carson Hocevar. And here's the thing. I watch more NASCAR than any other form of motorsport. Not because it's on every single week. Although that helps. But I come from a specifically sports car background. I love NASCAR. I enjoy it. I love the upswing it's on. And I love the story of SVG. I love the story of Carson because I just don't give a fuck. NASCAR needs guys like that. As opposed to the corporate. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being corporate and towing the line and saying the right thing. That's not really the NASCAR DNA. Michael over on YouTube. Wasn't Kyle Busch complaining about something Cleetus was experiencing? Yeah, I mean, he was of the notion of the approval process. I get what a lot of these guys were saying, that just someone... how Cleetus seemed to have speed run the process, and they're like, whoa. Everybody else had to pay their dues. Why does this dude start 1 year, and the year, a little over a year later, he's knocking on the door to the Cup Series? I'm not saying that's what Cleetus wanted. I'm just saying that's how they saw it. So, I do kind of understand it. I also understand that, last how many years have been utter misery for not only RCR and the Cup Series, but specifically Kyle Busch. The guy with the most wins in, if you combine all of NASCAR's touring series. Surefire first ballot Hall of Famer. Just being awful. I mean, outside of the pole at Daytona, he has done nothing. So I'm sure he was a little ornery. I'm sure, there was an element of, why the hell am I being forced to talk about this fucking YouTuber? That sort of stuff. Michael just goes, call it the Busch Series sponsored by O'Reilly's. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of crossover. You go to O'Reilly's, get the parts, you put them in, you might be enjoying one of them Busch. Michael goes, just call it the NOAPS or NOAPS. I mean, it is what it is. Obviously having that big title sponsored allows for a lot of things that has a trickle-down effect to the teams, the drivers, the individual. So it's a necessary evil. But the fact that it doesn't follow the nomenclature or style of the other series irritates me. Mike goes, Kyle was complaining about the tires that he was on. Goodyear problem. It could very well be it. From everything I've read, yeah, I guess I've read some articles on it, or heard via podcast, or watching the races, all this stuff, is that the next gen car, given that it is low profile tires, transaxle, sequential, more advanced aero than NASCAR typically has, and I'm not saying that as a good or a bad thing. Just, it has a diffuser, the downforce these things create. The window, with the old cars, you could slide them a little bit and keep them happy-ish. Now, in the next-gen car, apparently if you slide it or you get it out of whack, it's not only harder to catch, but you superheat the tire and you're pretty garbage for potentially the remainder of the run. And Kyle's talent was always being able to be just at the limit. If it strayed just a little beyond it, he could catch it. And that was his driving style. And I don't know if the two are aligning or meshing. And I don't know if I'm him, I can see being frustrated with it, because that's not what a NASCAR's been the entire history of NASCAR. Steve goes, I want to see Max Verstappen in a NASCAR. You're not alone. Kyle Larson said that. Van Gisbergen said that. There's a lot of people who want to see that. That kind of goes into, there's a topic floating around. It was a bit of a thing last year or 2 years ago. Who's the best driver in the world? Well, I think unequivocally it's Max Verstappen at the moment, just because of what he's doing. But I do agree with the sentiment in some of these. If you don't follow Speed on Fox, the podcast with Will Buxton and Kevin Harvick, because they've had a couple interviews on Kyle Larson and SVG, being the two most recent ones, talking about, do American drivers, stock car drivers in general, get the respect that they deserve internationally? And I don't think that they do, because there is a certain element to the fact of how hard could it be? You're turning left. As Cleetus is showing the world, it's not as easy as you think it is. Plus, there's this, I don't know how to describe it, but there's this European driver aversion to going to America and driving in ovals because of a safety concerns. Okay, it's a more confined space. There's more cars on the track, and you're traveling at an average higher rate of speed. I get that. But I don't think that's, in modern motorsport, I don't think that's an excuse. If you don't want to do ovals and that's not your thing, that's not your bag, just say it. Now, look, if some of these Indy guys who didn't do ovals because they were using Indy as trying to step up to, say, a Formula 1 or a Formula 2, that I kind of get. But, I mean, Max is having a ton of fun in a sports car right now. He'd have a lot of fun in a NASCAR because it's, again, more driver focused, but it's more close to a sports. He said he likes the V8 supercar down in Australia. Well, modern Cup car isn't that far removed from a V8 supercar. So, I think the NASCAR community just needs to bully him. Start saying, hey, I think SVG's a better driver than you. Look at what he's doing over in NASCAR, whooping all them boys on the road courses. I bet you can't do that. Now, Max might be like, well, looks like I'm going across the Atlantic to show people what's up. On the flip side, not a lot of F1 guys who've ever tried NASCAR have done overwhelmingly well. I guess the most successful was Juan Pablo. So, you know, it is what it is. Different cars, different eras, different whatever. Again, it's so I would love to see him over here. Fuck, I would love to see them bring back the International Race of Champions. Figure out a way to do it in December. Late November, early December. When every racing series across the world is pretty much on break. Have like a 3-race or 4-race schedule. You know, you do 2 races a weekend. You could do it on 2 races a day if that. You could do 2 races a day. You know, a 50-lap race, then another one. You know, you do a Daytona style track. You do a road course. You do a short oval, and you do a street course. Street course would be difficult just because of the nature of street courses. Yeah, I would be happy, totally fine with just insert another road course. And we find out. Pretty sure you want to race, Steve. It's more than a lot can say. Michael goes, complaint. Just talking about the tires. Wasn't. They weren't. Yeah, that's another thing. The modern NASCAR tire doesn't, as far as I understand it, it's more on the cup side of things. Tracks don't rubber in like they used to. So the quote-unquote clean line or the unrubbered line is the preferred line. They were talking about it a little bit at Martinsville. So, I mean, on the one hand, I really like the idea of NASCAR being a little bit sportier, so to speak. On the other hand, it doesn't feel like NASCAR. Every single form of motorsport out there suffers from front end aero wash. It's one of the biggest things with Formula One is dirty air and how it affects the front wing. It's the same thing with how it hits the splitter in sports car racing, NASCAR. The list goes on and on and on. So, I mean, I'd just assume see him remove the downforce and give him 900 horsepower and say, go figure it out. Like they used to. Let the driver figure out how much tire they can use, how much whatever they can use. Just go figure it out. Send NASCAR back to Suzuka. I mean, that would be great and all. That is a gigundous amount of money. I mean, huge money to ship 20 cars over there. And yeah, like Hunter said, like Kyle Busch complains too much about other drivers. I think Kyle Busch just pissed, man. You know, he ends up at Richard Childress Racing. I don't. What was it? He wasn't happy with how he left Hendrick. I forget who came in and what car. Who? God, I'm blanking on it. Was it Junior? Who came in and Bush basically was out of the seat. I don't know. I don't want to. I want to say that. Anyway, you know, it goes to RCR. RCR historically is a great team. And now they can't seem to get a good car. I'm not justifying it. You know, dude's always had an attitude, whether you're good or bad or whatever. You know, again, NASCAR, as much as NASCAR needs personalities that are fun and entertaining and different, you need personalities that are, for lack of a better word, I don't want to say annoying, but like they're ornery, they're angry, they never seem to be happy. It's never their fault. Like, they need villains. You know, you need that juxtaposition. Because if you have your favorite driver going up against squeaky clean corporate driver, yeah, it's cool that your dude might win. And you're happy about it. Maybe even ecstatic. Or what have you. But if you now enter your guy racing the quote-unquote villain and he wins, that might be one of those races that you wait and it comes out, the replay comes on YouTube and you watch it again. Right? You know. Like that sort of stuff. That little extra. That would take a good memory of, yeah, my dude won. To, yeah, my dude won and he kicked the ass of the guy I don't like. Steve goes, I believe Montoya won a total of 3 races and only driver to manage to take out a jet gyre. There's something to that. I mean, that's 3 more races won than a lot of people in NASCAR history. Montoya is a completely... You want to talk about drivers taking crazy pills of late. Montoya's another one. You know, dude was, when he was in F1, wasn't shy about complaining about shit. And now he's sitting here saying that Max shouldn't say stuff. Could it be because you're employed by the company that's broadcasting the race and they told you to, Anyway. Thomas, Kyle Busch is exactly why Cleetus gets more at the moment. He's not likable. I'm sure he struggles getting good sponsors that can market him to people outside of NASCAR circles. I mean, how do I put this with him? I would agree. I would say they have the ability to find Kyle's sponsors because of his success and his resume. Though I think that may be fading as he sort of fades. But I'm sure if he was a more likable guy, he'd get, it wouldn't take as much work to get quality sponsors, or you'd get a sponsor instead of who's a 1 race sponsor becoming a 2 race sponsor or whatever. Hunter thinks Kurt is better than Kyle in the Busch family. I don't know. I don't know enough either way to say one way or the other. I think, the total body of work of what Kyle has done. Granted, Kurt's championship was more, dude didn't miss races and win the championship. I don't know. But I do think that Kyle, whether you love him or hate him, I do think all of the race wins in all of the National Touring Series counts for quite a bit. Good news, Hunter. Steve agrees with you about Busch complaining too much. But I would listen to him due to the fact that he has a massive amount of wins and championships. I don't necessarily think that just because you have it, like I said, I think his resume carries weight. I think those wins, those championships, all that sort of stuff, I think that has something to do with it. And it should carry weight, and there should be okay, Kyle Busch is saying something. But on the flip side, doesn't necessarily make what he says gospel. And that's too extreme. I think when he speaks about NASCAR, you kind of have to listen, even if, I don't mean you have to listen. I don't mean like, to be a true NASCAR fan, if Kyle Busch says something, you have to watch the entire interview. What's that? Your kids need to be put to bed? Nope, you have to earn that NASCAR card. Watch the Kyle Busch interview or get out. I don't mean that. What I mean is when he says something, listen to what the gist of what it is he's trying to say. And then from there, like He has earned the right to be heard, even if we don't necessarily agree with what he has to say. Just based on what he's done in the sport. I don't want to sound like a Kyle Busch apologist. I kind of dude is just like, my brother, you have been racing a race car for how many years? It is your job. You are set for life. Your kids are set for life. Be happy, man. You know, Thomas goes, Dale Jr. had fans that were NASCAR fans because he's likable and people could relate to him. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're a good guy, you might be entertaining, maybe a little bit of funny. You know, when shit happens, you're like, that sucked. But in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't the most important thing. You know, don't get me wrong. You still, when the moment calls for it, you got to stand up for yourself. You know, can't be a pushover. But if it's the boy who cried wolf. You're constantly complaining. When you eventually have a legitimate gripe, people aren't going to listen. As opposed to, like, you know, I would argue that Dale Jr. had, you know, a leg up on most. Just the name carries a shit ton of weight. I'm not saying he didn't earn it. I'm not saying he hasn't carved out his own legacy in his own space, because he absolutely has. It is highly entertaining to listen to him talk about the sport. You know, I love what he's doing with, like, the Cars tour and everything. But, you know, he did enough on the racetrack to be taken seriously. And, you know, that name. People want to attach themselves to that name. Hunter goes, Kyle speaks his mind a lot. And, hey, world needs people like that. You know, instead, again, like I keep saying, it's like the guys who sit there and goes, yeah, the blah, 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 Chevrolet was a decent day. We had all right. What about the incident with them? You know, it's just hard racing, blah, 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 you know. Have you, you know, like when the guys are like, good job, thank you, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And like, they're just, you go down the line and there's like 4 interviews that are identical. And then you land on Kyle, who's pissed off. Again, whether you agree with it, you don't agree with it, whether you like it, whether you don't like it. It's something the sport needs because you need characters to, at the end of the day, even though we're watching it live, it is a story that is being told over the course of a season. You have your good guys, you have your villains, you have your main characters, you have the leading guy, and it's a story that's being told. And if you like everybody, that story just doesn't hit as hard as if you have a good. That's why I maintain, you know, in most really, really good movies or TV shows, there's a good villain. And I would argue that a good villain could carry a movie more than a good hero. Because villains are so, I don't like them. They're fighting them. Fantastic. I like you. Blah, 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 blah. You do enough, right? So, you absolutely need people like that. Again, you don't have to agree with them. You don't have to like them. But like for so long there, NASCAR was so corporate. It was, hi, my name is insert NASCAR driver name here. And I drive the blah, blah, blah Chevy. Everything was good today. We just didn't have enough to bake it. All congratulations to the people who kicked my ass today. Yada, yada, yada. Snore. Let's see here. Steve believes Kyle is superior over Kurt. Nobody besides Kyle would break both his legs and still win a championship that same year. Yes. Look, Kyle is a special kind of person. There's no denying that. And again, what he's done is hugely impressive. Let's see here. Thomas Jr. could have easily got the spoil Nepo kid label. 100%, and he didn't, and that's to his credit. He's no different than Ty Gibbs, other than Jr. is likable and people can relate to him. Oh, I completely agree. 100%. I'm also saying that the name Dale Earnhardt, regardless of how successful and big and great Joe Gibbs Racing has become, I don't know if that still compares to the name Earnhardt in NASCAR. Just from I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong because, what is it, Bobby Earnhardt or whatever, who's racing in the ARCA series in number 89? Forget his name. I want to say it's Bobby. I forget. But after Dale, there hasn't been many Earnhardts in NASCAR. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, just like you said, being likable, relatable, all that other stuff, you can do a podcast or two like Junior does. You're the person people want to talk to when they want to talk NASCAR, because they know not only is Junior an expert in the field, but he's also you're going to have a good time talking about it. 100%. And like you said, Dale Jr. could have had the biggest case to be do you know who my father is? And he didn't, to his everlasting credit. I mean, David from Australia goes, "Good day, guys, from Melbourne. Hope you are well watching the second practice session from the V8 Supercars on the telly. Attaboy. Gerard Crab goes, he, referring to Cleetus, run ARCA and trucks and also short trucks. Sponsor wants only super speedways for marketing views and selling merchandise. I agree, those are the bigger races. The more eyeballs. I will also say that everyone you listen to or talk to or hear from who was at Rockingham this past weekend on a holiday weekend, keep in mind, were absolutely blown away by the number of Cleetus shirts they saw. I think Cleetus transcends the prestige of a race because he's in a full-timer, but also because of what he brings. Um, if you notice, his two sponsors are sponsors that he owns a part of. Kinetic and Tommy's Car Wash. He owns a Tommy's Car Wash, and I don't know what percentage he owns, but he owns a part of Kinetic as well. So, at least to a certain degree, what the sponsors want is what he wants. And lastly, I'll touch on it because I do sense that, Talladega and Daytona bring more eyeballs just because of the name than, Iowa does or Kansas or what have you. Cleetus has also said that those are the tracks he wants to run. That's what he has interest in. So, let's see here. Michael. You're right, Michael. Bobby's racing at the Freedom Factory this weekend, plus the Earnhardt nephew. Yeah, I mean, Freedom Factory is such a cool place, man. I still maintain, and I don't know what their agreements are. I don't know if the track is in a condition to which it could host this. But I personally believe that if they were to do something like the Clash at the Freedom Factory, because if you could do it at Bowman Gray, you can absolutely do it at the Freedom Factory. Again, I don't know if that track's too beat up for NASCAR to be on, or whether or not it would need renovations, or even, it's got decent capacity. It's got stands on the front stretch and back stretch, so it's got. Again, I don't know if all that would need to be upgraded. Could you imagine the Clash at the Freedom Factory and Cleetus is putting on the show? I'm not even saying he's racing. In fact, you know what? I'm saying he's not racing in it. He's just the host. I think that's one of those scenarios where 1 + 1 = 3. Might even equal 4. No, it's down in Florida, so I don't know if they have the space on site for all the haulers, or obviously I think the track itself would need some upgrades and some changes to be considered. But from a strictly marketing standpoint, that is an absolutely everybody wins scenario. Let's see here. David. They're in New Zealand, Tupou. They have a cyclone hurricane coming. Well, shit. Yeah, it's always... How do I put this? As Americans, you generally start to think of, hurricanes being, quote-unquote, an American thing. And they very much aren't. I know they aren't. I think there's cyclones in the Pacific. Or they have a different name in the Pacific. I apologize. My friend Courtney is the meteorology nerd. But damn, well, first and foremost, I hope everyone stays safe. Between that, the fires, all the other shit you guys got going on there, didn't you just have a red sky in the Western Australia not too long ago? Because of the sand and the sunlight, it was literally red. Stay safe. Be safe. Hope everyone stays safe. Let's see here. Steve is calling it a night. By the way, Steve, longtime viewer, someone I could say is a friend of mine. He just recently had a son, turned a week old, I think today or yesterday. So just want to say officially on record on the YouTube, congratulations, my man. Let's see here. Robert Fuller goes, he, meaning Cleetus, needs more time, and even he knows that. That's exactly it. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier and everything like that. It's just get seat time, get it at places where the price of, I don't want to say failure, but the price of a mistake isn't as costly to others or even himself or the race team. Because even as he gets better, inevitably there is all the drivers. The best drivers in the world are involved in accidents. It happens. But getting that seat time and that ability to, again, just build up the database of feeling what the tire does. Again, how you're using your inputs in the corner versus new tires versus old tires, all this stuff is stuff the guys he's racing with have had a decade to do. And while he did do a lot of different forms of racing, he hasn't done this form of racing. He hasn't had to work with this type of tire on these types of tracks. And I guess he has the Freedom Factory, so he's done stuff. Michael goes, the grand prize is a plane, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. A Cub. Like a carbon fiber plane, too. Like, not a... I mean... How many people in the race, if they win that, can actually fly that? Because, yeah. I mean, it's a cool trophy. If I had land, it'd be like, what's that plane out there for? I got it for winning a race. Michael goes, the Freedom Factory needs a safer barrier. Yeah, you're absolutely right there. Does Bowman have it, though? Images. Oh, yeah, it does. That's a great point, Michael. That's an absolutely phenomenal point. Why does this chat not update? That is so weird. Anywho, and then Hunter goes, "You look like you're tired." It's allergy season here, and I've been getting smoked the last couple days. So like this part of my face is 10 different forms of puffy. I don't know if it shows. I'm not exactly what you would refer to as in shape. But yeah, like I feel it right here. So like it does come across that sort of stuff. But I don't mean to make this seem like it's a convenient segue. Like, oh, I guess I'm tired. I need to go. But hey, 2 hours solo. That's longer than most of the solo streams we do. So kudos to everyone in chat. I'm just going to rip off a couple of names. Just, we saw it here. We had Michael. We had Robert. Steve, as always. Hunter. I forget the devil something or other name. Thomas. Dave. David. Australian David. Satan's Rage. There it is. All you guys. Dennis Pennerone. Although he didn't want me to speak with pauses, even though I'm not reading from a script. But anyway, thank you to everyone who turned in, who watched, who commented. To everyone who's kind of new and enjoyed yourself here. We try to do this every single week. On Facebook and YouTube and hopefully some other platforms soon. Come on down, hang out, ask us questions. Like I said, we start with a topic and we have them so we can fill the time. It's a bad example. But we pick topics so we know, okay, if we talk about this, we're going to do 2 hours or whatever is usually our goal. I'll tell you, I'll be brutally honest with you guys. If you guys didn't come in here and weren't talking and weren't active and stuff like that, we wouldn't have done the 2 hours tonight. So like, that's all big ups to you guys. But just if you're into NASCAR and don't see a NASCAR thumbnail, come hang out, come say what's up, talk about the race. Because at the end of the day, like I said, y'all are the third host. But I just want to thank everyone again. Appreciate you guys tuning in, sharing, liking, all that sort of fun stuff. But as for this one, that's going to be a wrap. I guess I actually have to do the dad advice since Greg isn't here. I did not think of that. What would it be? Yes, Steve. Oh, that's not the right one. Well, I'm trying to think of that. Supercars drivers should do NASCAR wildcards sharing with U.S. tech centers. I've always thought that would be amazing crossover. Absolutely amazing. Dad advice. I'll be sappy. I'd like to give you something like, I'd like to give you something funny. But, yeah, just don't assume. Person cuts you off in traffic. Don't get mad. Don't assume you know what they're going through or what they're doing. Yeah, they might be a dickhead. They might not be. It's not worth it. But, yeah, thank you, Michael. Hit the like button. But yeah, just let it go. You don't know what they're going through. But on that note, I'm going to call it. It's been great, guys. And hopefully we'll be back next Wednesday. On Wednesday. This time, actually.